What is going down, SDS? We already see the bread gang in the building, dropping SDS in the chat. If you're vibing with your boy, we see all the squad hopping in here. Let's go. We see the squad. Happy Monday, everyone. We got stuff to talk about, per usual. Per usual. But I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. It's 1:35 on the West Coast here. Um, I'm not going to pretend like I've been engaging in a ton of conversations or anything. But it's 135, 136 here on the West Coast. And I'm already kind of over the quarterback talk. I'm already kind of over it. But, you know, as we know, we're going to talk about it. There's been some interesting things that have popped up since the weekend, since those reports from Matt Lombardo about the 49ers being continually underwhelmed. So, you know what? We're just going to talk about it. We're going to have some fun with it. We're going to break it down. We're going to look into it. Does it make sense? Does it not? Should we pay attention? Should we not? I mean, it's the off season, baby. What else do we have to talk about? What else do we have to talk about? But it is Trey Lance's birthday today. I tried to tweet out earlier, no Trey Lance slander on his birthday. Let the man live a little bit. Again, he is turning 22. I believe Trey Lance would have been one of the youngest quarterbacks taken in this particular draft. He would have been one of the youngest players, overall, I believe. Still very young kid. And again, it's a reminder to us, the 49ers drafted Trey Lance when he was 20 years old. And that's pretty insane to think about. To be essentially a kid and be taken by one of the most storied franchises in all of sports to be the future franchise quarterback at the age of 20. There's a lot of expectations that come along with that. There's a lot of pressure that comes along with that. So, I'm open to talk about other things, but I did want to kind of dive into this a little bit because I was actually listening to a Twitter space hosted by Rob Stats Guerrera of Niners Nation. And he had talked about how there's this Rich Scangarello pod. And if you're not familiar with Scangarello, he is the former 49ers quarterback coach. He is now the current offensive coordinator at Kentucky. And he was talking about it, and I was like, well, what's he talking about? And it kind of piqued my interest a little bit. So Scangarello did a podcast. Oh, can't forget. It's everyone's birthdays today, apparently. But Scangarello did a podcast, I guess, pre-draft to kind of talk about quarterbacks. Shout out user 615. We got 5 on everything, man. Let's go. Shout out the squad. Shout out everyone. Hope you're having a phenomenal Monday. But again, we're gonna kind of I'm gonna entertain it because I did find some nuggets in there that I did find to be interesting. And it almost wasn't what he said. It was like what he didn't say that was like pretty interesting. So again, this is, former quarterback coach of the San Francisco 49ers. He went on to this podcast with Greg Cosell. I mean, like legend when it comes to NFL evaluation and things like that. And essentially, to kind of sum it up, and it's worth a listen because although like we're going to tie this into the San Francisco 49ers, we're going to tie this into Trey Lance and do all that kind of stuff. I do think he makes good points in regards to what to look for in evaluation of quarterbacks. A lot of the same things that I look for. Obviously, he put an emphasis on certain things, and it was interesting the things that he put emphasis on when you take into context that the San Francisco 49ers selected Trey Lance at pick 3. So what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of like dive into it. We're going to like talk about it. Again, I posted a clip on YouTube. If you want to go look at it, again, it's the Talking Heads podcast, draft season with Greg Cosell. I forget the other co-host that is with them, but again, they were talking to 49ers, former 49ers quarterback coach Rich Scangarello. So some of the things what they were talking about were like what goes into the quarterback evaluation. What are some of the things that you look for as a, QB evaluator, which is what Rich is. So what he went on to say, one of the first things that he talked about was the ability to work within a contested pocket. Um, Bingo, 100%. I think that's one of the biggest things that you have to look at for quarterback prospects when it comes to trying to see who they are at the college level and evaluating and projecting them to the NFL level. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, you have to be able to maneuver within a pocket. You have to be able to maneuver within a muddy pocket, an ugly pocket, a pocket that's collapsing at you, a pocket where your guard's getting shoved into your face. You have to escape, you have to roll out, all those types of things. All right. So there wasn't really anything that was like crazy about that particular statement because you have to be able to do that. You have to be able to work under pressure. I think that's clearly one of the biggest things with quarterback evaluation, especially at the NFL level, is there's going to be more pressure than there isn't. It's going to be a lot uglier than it's going to be pretty. Um, so I thought that was an interesting thing. And again, if we're trying to tie this into Trey Lance, and we're trying to tie this into North Dakota State, and we're trying to tie this into, um, those particular instances of, like let's say Scangarello scouting Trey Lance. Well, I don't think Trey totally had a ton of contested pockets, at North Dakota State. Again, setting the tone for North Dakota State, who they were when Trey Lance was playing in 2019. You know, they're a powerhouse. They're the Alabama of the FCS. So they are kind of a tier above almost everyone else in their particular subdivision of football. So he really didn't have to deal with too many contested pockets. And they did a lot of play action. Now, granted, Trey Lance was, calling protections at the line. He was making hot route or calling hot reads, hot routes, um, getting them in and out of different plays at the line of scrimmage. So he did have a decent amount of responsibility at North Dakota State. But I do agree with the fact that you need to be able to see someone at the college level be able to work in a pocket that is imperfect to be able to see how one they respond. Are they still able to make their reads? Are they able to come off a read and refine it? What happens to their mechanics when the pocket collapses and it gets all muddy and it gets all crazy? One of Kyle Shanahan's favorite drill, if you guys remember going back to last draft season, was that bag drill where they're basically straddling a bag and they're working kind of east-west motion while already kind of in that throwing stance, and they make them rip it without being able to really step into the throw. The whole point of that particular drill is you're going to have offensive linemen, defensive tackles falling at your feet. You're not always going to be able to step into your throw, and you have to be able to work within those types of conditions. It can't all be perfect, and once it's not perfect, you just collapse as a quarterback. You have to be able to work when it's ugly. So that first particular point, okay, whatever. It wasn't that big of a deal. Um, but I thought these are they did this as a non-negotiable. That's the way they prefaced it. Non-negotiables for prospects that are going to be drafted and going into the NFL. One of the things that he said was, "quote They better have been a multi-year starter." Um, well, Trey Lance wasn't a multi-year starter. Trey Lance started 1 year. 2020 was the abbreviated year. They had the situation where it was, the COVID year. They had about 1 week. They threw together a game. It actually was one of his lesser games, but they had one game in 2020. Other than that, Trey Lance, we know him for his game in 2019, where he didn't have an interception and he was extremely efficient and all those types of things. Um, but he made an emphasis on the fact that his quarterback needed to have a multiple year starter, and also to have shown that he can lead his team to a championship. But what he did say was, when you look at mid-major schools and the smaller subdivision schools, he actually said there's been a lot of quarterbacks to come out of those types of schools. Again, you can point to guys, like Tony Romo and who have, Jimmy Garoppolo's an FCS quarterback, Carson Wentz is an FCS quarterback. Say what you want about him, but at one point he was looking pretty good. So there have been a lot of quarterbacks that come out of smaller subdivision schools or smaller schools. And one of the points that he was talking about was, when you can take a guy like a Josh Allen who went to a school that had, maybe one or two winning seasons before he showed up. And then when you enter this quarterback, and this is again part of the evaluation process into quarterbacks. Okay, well, Josh Allen went to it was Minnesota, right? And when he got there, they started winning, and he kind of turned the culture of that college, and he turned them around into a winner. And you're able to see the transformation of taking, a small school kind of prospect in a small school environment, and watch them turn the culture. And he said that was a big thing in his kind of evaluation. Wyoming, thank you. See, I get colors mixed up, man. I'm a visual person. I get color. That's why I get Kentucky and Memphis mixed up. Wyoming and Minnesota, kind of similar, but it is. You're right. Wyoming, thank you. Um, so when he was talking about that, he was talking, and you reference North Dakota State. Well, North Dakota State is a perennial powerhouse. North Dakota State has a system in place. They, like I said, they're known as the Alabama of the FCS. So it's a little bit different situation, because it's interesting based on the context, because Trey Lance won a championship at the FCS level with North Dakota State, but they were already North Dakota. They had already won, with your Carson Wentz's, they had already won with your Easton Sticks. They had already been successful and been successful for some time. So he didn't make the program. So that was kind of a backhanded, like, knock, if you will, just because, again, Trey Lance went into a system that already existed. He wasn't kind of the pinnacle, which is what Scangarello was talking about in regards to his evaluation. The other thing that he went on to talk about is that, he finds it, he wants to evaluate, these quarterbacks in pressure situations, rightfully so. He wants to evaluate these quarterbacks in 2-minute situations or 2-minute drills, which again, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And again, these are being posed as non-negotiables in regards to scouting quarterbacks from the college level going to the NFL. Um, he was talking about quarterbacks that essentially is like, you want to find quarterbacks that have been in those situations. There's some quarterbacks that come out of college and never really even being in 2-minute situations. He mentioned Ohio State, but when he said that, Trey Lance really wasn't in a. I don't know if he was in a 2-minute situation in his first and only year starting with North Dakota State. Because if we go and we look at the games in which Trey Lance played, they were ahead by a heavy amount in a lot of these games. Again, people talk about the amount of passes that Trey Lance threw when it came to him coming out of North Dakota State. But again, you look at these scores, man, 57-10, 38-7, 47-22, 27-16, 37-3, 46-14, 22-20. You maybe could have gotten a two. Again, I don't know. I'm just looking purely at these scores. You could have maybe got a couple 2-minute drills out of South Dakota State with 23-16, where he might have gotten close at the end and he had to drive down at the end to score. But again, when you look at all these scores and you look at kind of where Trey Lance was performing at, and again, as a team, they were dominating their competition. They were dominating with him running play action, with him again, kind of in a system that works not only with the quarterback, but the whole team is a well-oiled machine. Again, this is Scangarello saying you have some quarterbacks that don't have 2-minute situation that matters in their entire career. To me, that felt like a shot at Trey Lance, um, because that was one of the topics that we were talking about when it was Justin Fields. Was it Trey Lance? Is it Mac Jones? One of the things that people pointed to was that we've never seen Trey Lance really in a high pressure situation. I can speak to my evaluation of Justin Fields. My evaluation of Justin Fields and why I held him in such high regard is because I got to watch him, for that entire 2020 season where we didn't get to watch Trey Lance. And with Justin, I mean, we you saw it. He was getting hurt. He was getting banged up. He was just, they were games that came down to the wire. There were national championship games. There were conference championship games. So you could see the pressure. You could see those things where he had to be put in a situation that was high pressure, had to respond, had to bounce back. So we didn't see that in 2020 just for the simple fact that he didn't play. So I'm seeing in the chat the James Madison game had a 2-minute drill, which is what it kind of looks like based on the score. Um, Rome says James Madison was high pressure, low key, but Fields was just different. Again, I'm not comparing the two. I think they were, they're two completely different situations from where they came from. Again, Trey didn't even play in 2020. I'm talking about games from Justin Fields that he actually played in 2020. Uh, so again, one of the knocks that we are talking about having to be a multi-year starter. Well, Trey Lance didn't play in 2022. So again, that feels like a slight at Trey. Well, doesn't have you have some of these quarterbacks that don't have a 2-minute situation that matters in their entire career. Well, Trey Lance wasn't put in a ton of pressure situations. Now, we are pointing to a couple situations, but I think that's kind of the point is where when you look at the overall grand scheme of Trey Lance, you look at these games and his very, kind of small sample size, majority of these games were in hand. Majority of these games, they were out early. They have a phenomenal run game, phenomenal blocking up front, and they just kind of, went through the motions. They were clearly the most dominant team in the FCS, went undefeated this year, won the FCS national championship. Gray Fox says Scangarello couldn't fix Jimmy's vision problems and constant issues. If he wanted Noodle Arm Jones, then even better, he's gone. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Rich. You're the go, Brad. Hey, man, I have no problems with I had no problems with the Rich Scangarello strays. I don't. I don't. I'm just again, I'm trying to attack this from just this view. Again, I scouted all these quarterbacks. I scouted Trey Lance as much as I could with as much tape that I had available. I scouted, of course, Justin Fields heavily. Scouted Mac Jones heavily. I scouted uh, Davis Mills heavily. I scouted Kellen Mond. I scouted Kyle Trask. I scouted all these guys. So I find it interesting just to hear this kind of thought process from the 49ers quarterback coach who was in the room when they took Trey Lance, because the non negotiables that he is discussing as an evaluator of quarterback talent doesn't align with who Trey Lance is. And I find that fascinating. Again, Scandarello isn't here. He won't be coming through those doors anytime soon. Trey Lance is 22, still has a ton of time to develop and become the quarterback that we all think he will be. But I just find it fascinating that this guy went on a podcast before the draft, didn't say one word about Trey Lance. Again, he went onto a podcast to talk about evaluating quarterbacks ahead of the draft when just the year prior they scouted all the quarterbacks, they selected one. Not only did they select one, but they traded up to 3 to get one. The one they got was Trey Lance, and he didn't say a word. Didn't say a word about Trey Lance. And again, he didn't, so I just want to make that clear, like he didn't come out and say, he didn't really say anything. But to me, that's the indictment. That's the indictment from Scangarello on Trey, is that he literally didn't come out and talk about Trey. He didn't come out and talk about like, well, this is why, we saw these things in Trey, and these are why we took Trey, and these are the things that you would look for in the quarterback. Again, these things that he's pointing out would have been knocks on Trey. Uh, Able to work into a contested pocket. Again, you can argue that Trey didn't have to work a ton from contested pockets. A lot of play action, a lot of boots, a lot of design quarterback runs. You can make that argument that they didn't have a straight up, drop passing attack. And again, when they were up by 3 scores and you're running the football, um, I you can argue that there maybe weren't enough contested pockets to be able to put them on a timeline, be able to reference them and say, okay, well, Trey had, 87 contested pockets. We can go back, reference all 87 of those clips. We can all see how you can put them in a line. You can watch them all. You can assign consistency grades to that. And then you can be like, okay, we've seen enough. There's a big enough sample size. So I don't know if he has that sample size. Again, 1 year, which Rich said is a non-negotiable, non-negotiable, better have been, he literally said, quote, better have been a multi-year starter. Well, guess what? Trey Lance was not a multi-year starter. He was a 1-year starter. So the case in which Rich is building for how to go about scouting quarterbacks goes against the things that led the 49ers to draft Trey Lance at number 3. So again, I just found it fascinating after listening to it. I listened to it like 3 or 4 times. I just found it fascinating because of the things that he's talking about. And this is a great point by Baller. How did the host not ask him directly about Trey? Well, guess what? we've been on this podcasting thing for a while. I've been on to other pods. I've hosted my own pods. The real good ones, the ones that have their stuff together, they do rundowns, especially when you have guests. So when you're bringing on a guest, you have an entire rundown of all the topics that you're trying to hit so that the guest is understanding of what we're going to be talking about, and get you also have the opportunity to be like, I don't want to talk about that, or don't ask me this. So the fact that they did not ask him a direct question about Trey, they offered up a lob from Trey, like they mentioned his name, but Rich didn't take the bait. He didn't take the bait. He did not take that opportunity to talk about Trey Lance. So again, another very interesting perspective of what he had to say. Um, he also made a point again of referencing one score games. And he said, find me a guy who can win them. Again, these are not his non negotiables. He just got done talking about quarterbacks that have really no 2 minute situations that matters in their entire career. You could point to Trey Lance as not really having a 2 minute situation that mattered in his career at North Dakota State. And that's not saying he didn't have them, but when you're talking in kind of generalities and that's probably the type of metric that they're looking for, I bet Rich would quantify what Trey went through as you could say what he said. And again, he referenced one score games as being a key point in the evaluation because he wants to see how guys react in those pressure situations, which at a certain point, I agree with. You want to be able to see how guys are able to manage one score games, how they are going to handle when they're behind. How they react, all that type of stuff. I get that. But again, you look at the quarterback the San Francisco 49ers drafted, there was, you could argue that this is a one score game, 8 point lead. You could argue this is a one score game. And you could argue this is a one score game. So essentially, three one score games in his entire career, which isn't, you know, a ton. But again, this is Rich's non negotiables. Um, and again, we already talked about, did they elevate the program to new heights? Again, where Trey Lance was with the program was the program. Um, so I just found his podcast appearance to be fascinating. I found it to be fascinating. One, again, this is just my context. This is just my thoughts. For a former 49ers quarterback coach to go onto a draft pod to be talking about what he evaluates and what he holds in high regard in quarterback evaluation, in order to determine if a pick is a hit or a potential bust. Um, the fact that his team that he was just on drafted a quarterback at pick 3 in a trade up. And he didn't mention his name one time. He didn't say a single reference point that could be directly tied to Trey Lance. Again, the things that we're talking about, I am connecting them to Trey. He did not connect them to Trey. Um, he did not say any of this in the context of Trey Lance this, Trey Lance that. That's the point. He didn't say nothing. So he didn't say anything. Again, to Baller's point, the host didn't ask him anything about Trey Lance. And the things that again, I scouted Trey, so I know these things. That's why they instantly popped out to me. Um, these were the talking points last year. When is it Trey? Is it Justin? What are these, these types of things? Um, and the things that he's mentioning don't align with Trey Lance and who he was as a prospect. So I just find that fascinating. Again, he's not on the roster. He's not here anymore. Clearly, he's not in the building. So does what he says does it matter? Not necessarily. No, it doesn't. But again, there's so much of this right now. Again, ignited by Matt Lombardo's report. No, it wasn't even a report. He just quote tweeted something where the 49ers coaching staff was continually underwhelmed. Well, who sounds like they were continually underwhelmed by Trey Lance? It sounds like Rich was pretty continually underwhelmed by Trey Lance. If this was your criteria and Trey Lance doesn't fit that criteria, and again, those are the kinds of things where I could see Trey Lance having a little bit of struggle with. Again, being in pressure situations for the first time at the age of 20, 21, 22 at the NFL level could be overwhelming. But for someone to say he was underwhelming, that would have to be, again, it's getting to the point where it's like, what, like, if you had expectations and those weren't met, like, at what point did you have unrealistic expectations? Like, at what point did you set a bar that was too high? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why it's just like, it's his comments were pretty fascinating to me. Because again, I view coaching in a certain light. I view coaching as it's my job to take a guy who hasn't had contested pockets potentially, who hasn't been a multi-year starter, who hasn't been asked to win a ton of games and prepare him. That's my job. Like, and I should be like understanding of that. Like that if yeah, in a perfect world, the quarterback that I'm drafting has 3 years of experience coming back from games, playing in national championships, high stakes games on national television, where you know, the media is ripping his tail for a solid week. And then he's got to come out and he's got to perform in the face of adversity. Like, yeah, in a perfect world, those are the types of things that I would look at. You know what I'm saying? Like, I would bump that above. Again, if you guys don't remember, I was very high on Justin Fields for those exact reasons. I watched Justin, and I've said this. You can go back and back and back into the logs of lives that we've done in pre draft situations. The reason why I held Justin in a higher regard than Trey was that exact reason. I never saw Trey have to fight because I didn't see him in 2020. There was no tape. In 2019, I had limited tape, so I could only see what I could see. In 2020, I was watching Justin in real time, thinking, could he be the 49ers' next quarterback? So I watched Justin through that lens, go through adversity, play in huge games, be hated on by a lot of people, and he just kept overcoming it. He just kept overcoming it. So those were one of the things that I held in very high regard. And I couldn't compare to Trey because Trey wasn't playing in 2020. So I can understand like the way he's quantifying his evaluation. I just find it fascinating that he deflected any Trey conversation and the things that he mentioned go kind of against what Trey was as a prospect. And that's not Trey's fault. It's not his fault. It's not his fault. It's not his fault. But that's why we come back to this Matt Lombardo conversation of being continually underwhelming. Like, Underwhelming of what? What is he underwhelming? You drafted a kid, literally a kid, that still has to learn. And you, as the coach, should have known that and been prepared to grow with said quarterback. So it's interesting. It's very interesting. And then again, Matt Lombardo also went on 95.7 the game with Damon and Rado to kind of extrapolate on his thoughts of the continually underwhelming situation. And he pointed to arm strength and deep ball accuracy. And thank God I was at training camp. Like thank the Lord. And like this is why I'm going to training camp again. And I'm gonna be there every day that I can be. And I'm gonna watch with my own two eyeballs. The reason why I'm gonna go watch with my own two eyeballs is because do you know who was continually underwhelming with deep ball accuracy and arm strength? And again, I'm not trying to take shots here. I'm really not trying to take shots here. But that was Jimmy Garoppolo, man. I talk about this all the time. The first day of padded practice, you had Trey Lance launching bombs everywhere, all over the field, outside the numbers, deep down the seam, 40, 50-yard bombs, rolling out at the pocket to his left on the move, dropping 40-yard bombs in stride. You know who wasn't? Jimmy Garoppolo. You know who stayed after practice to work on his long ball? Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's why it's like, what are we talking about? Who are you talking to? Like, who is this person that's saying, "Oh, we're underwhelmed by his deep ball accuracy and his arm strength"? Two probably of Trey Lance's arguably best traits. And I'm just like, thank goodness. Thank goodness I have eyeballs and I can watch football and I can take, all the notes in practice and I can search through and I'll be like, "Oh yeah, I remember this period of one-on-ones. Okay, yeah, I remember this team period." I got notes and notes and notes and notes. This is all from training camp. This is all from every play. I logged something. So the fact that Lombardo is saying that now I can only speak to what I saw in training camp. I can't speak to what happened after training camp. But again, go to preseason. Trey Lance's first touchdown is a 40-yard bomb down the field in the breadbasket of Trent Sherfield. And it's like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? What are we talking about? Shout out, Justin. I appreciate you guys. Again, you guys know me. I just try to make it make sense. I just try to make it make sense the way I see football and the way that these reports are coming out, what Rich is saying. Again, if you wanted to tell me that, you know, Trey Lance struggled in muddy pockets, yeah, okay. 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 I could see that. I have notes of that. I do have notes because guess what? The second team offensive line, who they were getting whooped. Shout out my boys on the O line. Shout out my boys on the O line, which is who I watch when I go to training camp. Shout out my second teamers, but boy, were they getting whooped in practice. They were getting whooped by that defensive line rotation. And guess what? We got to see Trey Lance in muddy pockets constantly, if not consistently. And he did. have some struggles at times. But that's show anyone is going to struggle when your offensive line can't block. It does. You don't. You don't have to be a rookie. You could be a 10-year veteran. If your offensive line isn't going to block for you, it's going to be very hard to do your job well. So it's. Oh. Cap says the second Lombardo clarified it was arm strength and accuracy. Just proved my initial feeling that the report was BS. Yeah, again, he could have said anything else. He could have said anything else. He could have said, maybe he wasn't processing, or picking up the playbook. Like, I feel like to me, I could rationalize that because guess what? Learning Kyle Shanahan's playbook is very difficult. Learning it as a rookie, learning the entire it's a twofold, it's like a two-pronged situation. You're learning a new playbook that is clearly 40 million times more in depth than what you had in college, but you're also learning a new language. Um, Again, a guy who has dyslexia essentially, uh, I struggled in that regard. I struggled with the wording because my brain flips things without me trying. So that part is hard. If you could have said, "Oh, he struggled with maybe picking up the playbook," or "He struggled," but no, that's not what we heard out of training camp. What we heard out of training camp, oh, Trey Lance is picking up the playbook faster than anyone could have anticipated. The person who's in their playbook the most, because we can track the time, is Trey Lance. So that didn't appear to be it. So again, these reports are interesting, to say the least. Uh, the fact that it was prefaced as an arm talent, which is what I would say. If it's an arm talent issue, that's not the issue. When it comes to measurable, physical, that's not the issue with Trey Lance. He's young. He's a young quarterback. So what do the young quarterbacks need to do? They need to learn and they need to build confidence. Did the 49ers build Trey Lance's confidence? No. Well, we could check that one off the list. Did he learn as much as we can take away from an evaluation standpoint? We think so. That's what they told us he did. We're not in those meeting rooms. We're not like I have no idea if Trey Lance picked up the playbook like they said he did, but they said he did. So again, I find it all interesting. I find it all interesting because you guys know I keep that thing on me. So when I hear Rich, when I hear Lombardo, at what point are they going to say he's a rookie? Like, and treat him that way. Like, at what point are they going to say, maybe he didn't come from, a situation where he was a multi-year starter. Not only was he a 1-year starter, but he was young as hell. Dude was 19. It's not like he sat behind someone. He didn't sit behind Carson Wentz. He showed up and he played. And he won a lot of games and was ultra efficient. Didn't throw any interceptions until his final game in 2020. So again, the points that they're making don't make sense to me. You can I can quantify a 22-year-old as of today, like literally turned 22 today, struggling with the intricacies of the NFL. I would struggle 100%. But thank God I'm not Trey because I would have crumbled already. So shout out Trey, man. Hey, one of the things that I will take away that can hopefully be turned into a positive is okay, the same things that I really liked about Justin Fields and his evaluation, one of the things that I loved about Justin Fields, especially throughout the year, is how many people hated on him. So one of the things that I loved was you heard the noise. All and he played for Ohio State, right? So Ohio State, that's comparable to NFL level of noise, coverage, things like that. Nowhere near the FCS. But Ohio State, we got to hear week in, week out. Oh, Justin's not that guy. Oh, he's not that guy. And just like we got to watch him. We got to watch him deal with that, take it on the chin, and go play and then be successful. Then deal with the other things that came along and bounce back and be successful. So with Lance, he still has that opportunity in front of him. Now he's already starting off on this leg where he's being doubted. He's being questioned. Clearly his old coaches don't believe in him. That was my biggest takeaway from Rich. My biggest takeaway from Rich is he did not believe in Trey Lance. So when you have a coaching staff that doesn't believe in you, uh clearly they're likely not building a environment of belief as well. So it's making a little bit more sense to me. It's making a little bit more sense to me. Again, we already know the locker room was behind Jimmy. We already know that. We already know that. Now, the quarterback coach, to me, again, my biggest takeaway was the omission of Trey Lance. So to me, okay, well, your coach didn't, your literal coach, your quarterback coach wasn't about it. Okay. Is that Trey's fault? I mean, I guess if so facto, he doesn't like Trey because of Trey. But is that really his fault or is that a personal problem? So I would imagine Rich wanted Jimmy to play too. I would imagine too. Again, Jimmy's the leader. They call him franchise for a reason. So it's starting to make more sense to me. It's starting to make a little bit more sense to me. Was Trey Lance the, ideal prospect? Probably not. But when you look at Trey and you evaluate Trey for what he is, measurables through the roof, intangibles through the roof, football knowledge through the roof. What does he need work on? All the things that come with experience and age. So it's up to you as the coaching staff to be able to identify that and grow with your player. You understand it is going to be a process. Right? That's why it's like this is a process, right? Like we knew that when we took Trey, like there was going to be a process. He wasn't going to come out and all of a sudden be Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson was a far different prospect when he was coming out of Clemson than Trey. The reason why Deshaun Watson, I would have a higher regard for Deshaun Watson as a prospect, was because he's been in those moments. He's been in that fire and he's built that experience and he's built that core shell. He's been able to go through that and come out on top. With Trey Lance, it was a TBD. Like we didn't know. We just didn't know. But you should know that when you're going into that and understanding that one of the variables is to actually have to bring him along. And I understand it, just trying to bring some relatable thought processes to it. You know, I had to trade. I got a promotion one time, and I was going to a different department, and I had to train a guy who's coming from a different department, and he was coming up. And he's really good at what he did, but what we were training him to do was a complete shift. And I could see, I was like, man, like this is hard. Like it can be hard. Like you think it's not going to be hard. Like you think like, oh, it should be a pretty smooth transition, but it's not all the time. Sometimes you have to be patient. You have to grow and kind of grow at their own pace and kind of move at their own pace. And I know the NFL is not that, but at a certain point, like there needs to be an understanding at least that there is development involved, and he isn't a finished product. I think that's the best part of what Trey is that he is a developmental prospect. I look at that as a plus because if I was the 49ers and I was in the coaching staff, um, I would be thrilled to be able to develop this kid who has is so raw from an experience standpoint and be able to be there with him and grow him from the start, meaning he doesn't have any other outside influences, really much of any. And if I really believed in myself that much as a coach, we could then build him from the ground up, and that would be exciting to me. That's why I've always been for the rookie quarterback, because I'm about that development. I am a development person. I am pro development. I don't think we are, again, I don't think we are linear as humans. We are either getting better or we are getting worse, and we are all at different stages within our life. You are able to identify and evaluate what stage is this person at. Well, guess what? You should have been able to identify day one that Trey Lance was going to need some seasoning. So why is that now a detriment against him? Why is that now a talking point that, oh, Trey Lance needs to get more experience? Like, duh. Like, why is that a divisive, like, why is this like being weaponized in a sense? You know what I mean? It's just like it's what makes this quarterback uh talk exhausting. It's like this dude's still a prospect. Like we still have to treat him like a prospect. Like, come on. Um Cap says, "Was it just me or was it weird when Scangarello was high on Josh Allen pre-draft, yet didn't want to mention Trey when that's his most common pro comp?" And this actually was the part where the host mentioned Trey Lance. That he mentioned Trey Lance in the same breath as Josh Allen. Scangarello grabbed the Josh Allen part of it, and that's where uh, the whole talk about the 2 minute situation came from. The whole talk about find a guy that who you can win with in the sense of one score games. Uh, the quote, did they? This is quote from Rich Scangarello in regards to this point. He said, "Did they elevate the program to new heights?" That's why I like Josh Allen, because Josh Allen elevated Wyoming to new heights. Um, so again, to me, to me, that interview just was like Rich saying, I didn't like Trey Lance. And so for me now, oh, we see the Lombardo tweet, we see these talking heads, and we see a lot of this, and that makes sense. If your quarterback coach isn't on board with the future of your franchise, then what are we doing? That's why he's not here anymore. That's probably why we had, and he's probably a little miffed. he was a little miffed because now look at Rich. Did his reputation take a hit as a quarterback evaluator? To me, what I hear from Rich is these are the non-negotiable things that I need in a quarterback. And guess what? Trey Lance is none of those things. So for me, I'm like, okay, okay, okay. I got you. I got you, Rich. I got you. So to me, I took his I took his comments, the mission of Trey Lance, again, just like Cap's talking about. He went straight Josh Allen because guess what? Josh Allen is hit, and if Trey Lance hits, he's gonna hit with Scangarello out of the building, and guess what? Scangarello is gonna get no credit. If Trey Lance becomes a successful quarterback, if Trey Lance becomes one of these guys, if Trey Lance becomes a Josh Allen, do you know who's going to get zero credit? Scangarello. If Scangarello, like, let's fast forward 3 years from now and we're doing a live and we hear a pod from Scangarello talking high and mighty about Trey Lance because Trey Lance has developed into a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. We are going to come onto these airwaves and we are going to point directly to this podcast to be exactly why you get zero credit for Trey Lance. Because, again, the fact that he doesn't talk about the quarterback that they had in their building on a quarterback scouting prospect based podcast and omits literally anything about the quarterback that he had just worked with, amidst any experience from that scouting process. All right. Okay. It's fine. It's fine. You don't have to like him, but we will remember. We will remember. It's not that serious. It's really not that serious, but we've seen it before. We've seen it before. So I don't know. I just wanted again, I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to talk about those things just because not that I wanted to talk about this. Trust me, I did not wake up today wanting to talk about quarterbacks. I think you guys know that we've hit our quota for the year already on quarterback talk. Uh, Typically, now the only reason we talk about the quarterbacks is because someone else is talking about the quarterback, and then we have to address it. Did I miss a super chat? I might have. I might have missed a super chat. I did. Shout out Charles. Didn't do that on purpose. Thank you. And as you guys know, I will miss a super chat from time to time, especially when I'm in the zone. If I'm in the zone, I very well might miss a super chat. So shout out to Charles for bringing it back up. Get Trey a good old line and turn him loose. 100. No, there's multiple levels to it. Not only get him a good offensive line, get him a good scheme. Get him something that he can thrive in. So get him something that the team can thrive in. Because I'll tell you this from I missed multiples. I did. I missed Corey's too. Shout out Corey. My bad. Hey man, sometimes I get in the zone and I lose track of where I am. I'm just like, wow, I just got done talking about Trey Lance for 20 minutes. Sorry guys, I see your super chats. I'll get to that one next. Appreciate you guys. Uh, yeah, I agree. Get him a good O line. They got weapons now. Again, you look at the running back stable, not too bad. You look at the tight ends, not too bad. You look at the wide receivers, not too bad. Offensive line, it's going to be a bit of a just question mark, just because we don't really know yet. I mean, we're on a good start. We have Trent Williams, best left tackle in all of football. That's a good place to start. But it's going to be very interesting to see what it looks like in training camp. Obviously, going to be the main thing I'm going to be watching. But not only just turn him loose, but just just build some confidence around the kid. Like just build some damn confidence. That's why you can't have Jimmy around. Oh, interesting thing about the Jimmy situation. I might as well talk about it. Um, but let's put a wrap on this. I want to make sure I put a wrap on this first. I agree with this though. I I talk about it all the time. If I was the GM, we would have the best online in football. We would have the most athletic and the best offensive line, and I would not stop taking and drafting offensive linemen until I hit on all 5 spots, and all 5 spots were legends. That's how my team would be built. Now we see how the 49ers, they put the emphasis on the D line, which I respectable, 100% respectable, especially when you got a coach like Kosarek, respectable. Um, but if it was me, I would have the dopest O line in all of football, and it would not be even close. And then we would do whatever the hell we want because no one would be able to stop us. We block everything. But that's just me. Um, Corey said, shout out Corey. Sorry I missed your super chat earlier. Again, if I missed your super chat, not on purpose. Sometimes, sometimes I will hold super chats off to make sure it fits into the topic that we're talking about. But if I blatantly missed your super chat, please let me know. Corey said, doesn't matter what Lombardo heard, like arm strength, put on the tape. There's plenty. Not just deep, but the zip. I mean, think about that. Think about the dart. Think about the dart that think about the dart that Trey threw over the middle to Kittle. Kittle one-armed it over Justin Reed. I think it was against the Texans when he literally just freaking darted that ball solid 25 yards downfield. A pass that I don't know if Jimmy would have taken. I can also go back to the pass that he didn't complete. I think one of the best throws that Trey had of his first year was a pass that was incomplete to Brandon Ayuk in the corner of the end zone. I was actually sitting in that corner um, at that game, and I was impressed seeing it live, and then again going back and watching it on tape. Uh, Even more impressed. What did I like about it? Hey, the pocket was kind of collapsing on him. Well, Rich, Rich, hey, Rich, the pocket was kind of collapsing on Trey. What did Trey do? He stood up into the pocket. Oh, Rich. Hey, Rich, did you see that? Trey stood up into the pocket and quickly whipped it to a spot where literally only Brandon Ayuk could get it. Brandon Ayuk got mugged in that particular situation. You go back, the DB is holding on to Brandon's one arm, and he tried to one arm it, but it was a dime, absolute dime. And guess what he did? Got a little muddy in that pocket, Rich. Hey, Rich. That pocket was a little muddy, Rich. Anytime that Trey Lance has a successful play in a muddy pocket, we're just going to ether Rich. I think we're going to be shading Rich a lot on this channel. I hope we're okay with Rich strays. I hope we're okay with that. I hope no one's gonna get too upset by that. But if Trey Lance comes out and has a phenomenal year next year, and he does these things that Rich made it kind of alluded to that Trey isn't. Oh, no disrespect meant, Rich. We're just having fun, but you might catch some strays on this channel. Oh goodness. Um, let's see. There's another one. Uh, King of the Jordan Mason Hive. Justin, is Jordan? Oh, I like this one. Shaderello. Hey, Justin, is Jordan Mason making this roster? Yes or no? Right now. We need your bold take right now. Is Jordan Mason making this roster? I want to see what he says. The king of the Jordan Mason Hive. I want to see what he says. And this is active roster. Final 53. What does he say? The suspense is killing me. The suspense is killing me. Oh, baby. He said 100%. You heard it here first. Jordan Mason, if Jordan Mason makes this roster, I'm giving all the credit in the world to him. Got to get my directions right. Hey, I like it. Just so we all know, King in the Jordan Mason Hive. Look at that beard, by the way. Glorious. Absolutely glorious. This one. Uh, did I see the schedule leak? I actually didn't. Trey versus Jimmy week 1? Who are we playing week 1? Oh, was it I think I did see it actually. Was it at Panthers? Was it at Panthers? Oh, great. This is perfect segue into the Jimmy stuff. Perfect segue into the Jimmy stuff. So SDS, there might be a potential out that the 49ers have for Jimmy that I didn't think about. Coach from the top row, the straight up people's elbow on Rich's face. Oh God, you're right because his name is Richard. Oh boy. Oh boy, coach. Oh boy, coach. That was a good one. I like that one. Yeah, that he shouldn't he probably shouldn't have went on and talked about quarterbacks and just completely omit the quarterback that he clearly didn't like. I'm not going to read that one though because I don't want to get I don't want to get booted. But y'all can see it. Y'all can see it. Shout out coach. Legend. But I didn't want to talk about the Jimmy Garoppolo thing because I posted a couple videos of it. Mike Florio and Peter King. Again, two polar opposites in my perspective. Mike Florio, 49ers hater. Like I know how it is, man. These national reporters, they'll put out a report, you know, when they're getting started and a fan base, hey, guess what? These 49er fans, we're ravenous. And if you say something bad about our team, oh boy, you don't even have to say something bad about our team. You could literally just say something that you hear and we don't like it. Oh, we're coming down your front door. So I would imagine that has happened to what's his name? Florio. I think a lot of it was also spurned by his shots at Richard Sherman because Richard Sherman famously doesn't have an agent. And I believe Mike is a former agent, so he's an advocate for agents. And they had a lot of bickering, and I think 49er fans got involved in that and let Mike know. So I think Mike has a little thing against the 49ers and 49er fans, and that's fine. That happens all the time. I'm not too worried about it. Um, but it was interesting because on the opposite side, the two people in the conversation, Mike Florio, 49ers hater, we take his opinions with a grain of salt, but he was talking to Peter King. Oh, I highly respect Peter King. I think Peter King is one of the last, like, when you talk about journalism, like real journalism, which, unfortunately is a bit of a dying industry because I don't consider myself a journalist. That would be the last thing I'm, if anyone, are you a reporter? No, no. I'm not a journalist. I'm not a reporter. I don't claim to be one, and I don't pretend to be one. And I will never say that I am because I do believe that there is a code to journalism. And there's a way you go about it. And I didn't go to school for journalism. I went to school for multimedia communications. What do I do now? Multimedia communications. Shocker. I'm not a journalist, but I do believe Peter King is a phenomenal journalist and arguably one of the he's like an old school dog, like one of the big hitters. So listening to them kind of talk about the situation back and forth was really interesting because too Peter King has a ton of relationships with the 49ers. Again, I think Peter King was in the draft room in 2017 when the 49ers did their draft. I think he was in their draft room and he did an entire piece on it and all that kind of stuff. And I see Peter King at 49ers training camp once a year. Um, he's got a relationship with the 49ers. He gets a lot of information, probably straight from Kyle, straight from Jed, straight from John. So it was interesting watching those two go at each other in regards to the 49ers world because as one person that I trust a lot and I know is tied into the 49ers, and then another person who's like anti 49ers. But the reason why it was what was interesting about the Jimmy Garoppolo situation is because Florio presented a situation where the 49ers could potentially get out of his contract with zero money to him. So obviously, we talk about it all the time with Jimmy Garoppolo. We believe that the 49ers are not letting go of Jimmy Garoppolo because he got the offseason surgery. The surgery triggered a injury guarantee. Now Jimmy Garoppolo is guaranteed $7.5 million if the 49ers were to cut him. Well, it's also coming more and more to the light that it does appear that Jimmy Garoppolo kind of torpedoed his own value. You could argue torpedoed the 49ers um, into getting out of a potential trade. It did really feel like that the San Francisco 49ers were about to trade Jimmy Garoppolo to Washington. Um, and before that move happened, Jimmy had surgery and effectively killed the deal. And then you see the pivot from Washington. Washington goes and gets Carson Wentz. You see what they gave up for Carson Wentz. Um, Very well could have been the haul for Jimmy Garoppolo. But anyways, so that's starting to become more of a firm story that Jimmy Garoppolo went off site, had an unauthorized surgery, and effectively, we hear it as, almost had a deal. I've heard other things. Um, so I think it was a lot closer than a lot of people kind of wrap their head around. So then Jimmy kills the deal. Now he's on the roster, kills his trade value. No one wants to trade for an injured quarterback. Go through the draft. Obviously, the Deshaun Watson uh, domino falls and completely changes the market. Um, you still have Baker Mayfield out there. So, anyways, the way we've been kind of conceptualizing this is that the 49ers are kind of stuck with Jimmy. You either cut him, you eat that 7.5 million, and you just move on with your life, and then you open up what 8.5 million in cap space because again you don't get the full whatever 25 million, whatever it is. Um, so I've been kind of this thought process that the 49ers kind of have to hold on to Jimmy and or they have to trade him. There's like really not an in between. And that's why we've heard, well, we've budgeted to keep Jimmy. If we want to keep Jimmy on the roster, we can do it. This time around, hey, I believe them because if you guys remember last year, I was banging the table for Trey Lance to start. I was banging the table to trade Jimmy Garoppolo. I was banging the table to not go through this drama because of what we've seen. So I was heavy on start Trey as a rookie, even if he wasn't ready. But if we could get the locker room to buy in, if we could get the fan base to buy in, and we could do that, then Trey Lance, we could grow with Trey Lance. We could then really have effectively a, Josh Allen 2.0 situation where we know he's probably going to struggle in his first year, but we're there with him and we're going to grow with him. And it's cut and dry who the quarterback is. Well, they didn't do that. And we are where we are now. But what Florio had brought up was the 49ers might have an out here because as soon as Jimmy can pass a physical, if he passes a physical and then the 49ers cut Jimmy, they don't owe him any money. I'll say that one more time. If Jimmy passes a physical, they can cut him and owe him $0. And so what Florio had brought up was, well, what if the 49ers go into training camp? It's a competition again. Uh, and they keep Jimmy on the roster. They kind of get through training camp. You know, Jimmy gets healthy and then they cut him. And they cut him with rosters set with every team in the NFL. Uh, and I found that to be interesting to be like, because I thought it was one way or the other. They had to trade him or they had to keep him. But if he's able to pass the physical, they could theoretically cut him and then not owe him any money. So I wonder if they're waiting for that. I wonder if they're just sitting tight and saying, you know what, listen, we're either going to get compensation for you because you're a starting quarterback and that's valuable, or we're at the very least not going to pay you 7.5 million. So to me, it brought up a little interesting nugget that maybe Jimmy still can get cut. And the 49ers could just string this along because he's not going to be there at OTAs. He's not going to be there at minicamp. He's not going to, Jimmy won't be there because he's not healthy. He should theoretically be healthy by training camp. So I found that to be interesting. I found that to be interesting. But it does feel like it is starting to feel like this Jimmy drama is Don Yee, Jimmy, uh, I don't know, getting back at the 49ers for uh I'm sure if you talk to them, They're going to say they were mistreated, they were mishandled, all that kind of stuff. And so that's, hey, the game that they're playing. But this game's far from over. So going to be interesting. Niner by Nature says, Brad, what if Jimmy say I need thumb surgery? That would be wild. That's why, honestly, I don't think they let him step foot on the field. I think if he passes a physical, if it's me and you can't trade, like, let's say he passes the physical and you still can't trade him to anyone, like, no one will take him, then you cut him. But I think you have to get him to pass the physical first. Then you see who's willing to trade. While that's happening, I don't let him step foot on the field. I don't let him go into practice. We DNP him. We do not play Jimmy Garoppolo because for this exact reason, he could walk onto the field and throw a couple passes and then all of a sudden have mystery thumb surgery. And like, then that guarantee is fully locked in at what, 25, 27 million. That can't happen either. So it's a wild time to be a 49er fan. It's a wild time to have to deal with this type of stuff. It's wild, right? The 49ers trade up. They draft a rookie quarterback. Everyone's excited. They keep Jimmy. Everything shifts towards Jimmy and creates like this divide. They have to kill the Trey package because it's hurting Jimmy's ego, and players feel like it's undercutting, Jimmy, which is true, 100%, totally undercutting Jimmy as the starting quarterback. So, but you should have known that when you kept both of them on the roster and played with that idea of having two quarterbacks. Why did we talk about all off season? You don't have two quarterbacks. Don't try to have two like systems. Don't try to trot in Trey for a couple. Like, don't do that. Turned out to be right there. They killed that. Um, so, and now to the situation, it's interesting. It's very interesting. So ultimately, the drama is still going to continue. Um, I'm less concerned about entertaining the drama. I'm more concerned about understanding it better, if that makes sense. Um, like the rich stuff, just understanding it. The Lombardo stuff, trying to understand it, to then just be like, you know what? Again, if Lombardo said, Trey is, struggling with pocket awareness, okay, I can see that. But the fact that the main points of reference are arm strength and deep ball accuracy, it's like, do you not know who the other quarterback is on the roster? Like, do we need to go back to Thursday Night Football and Jimmy missing a wide open juice for a touchdown? Like, do we need to go back to Jimmy missing short outs to Jeff Wilson in the end zone? You can go back to 2019 Rams game, Coleman coming out of the backfield, overthrowing Coleman like on a leak, like less than 10 yards away. Like, there's a consistent track record of Jimmy being inaccurate on balls that are passed short to intermediate, and to the point where he doesn't have a willingness to throw them. Go ask Brandon Ayuk. Like, so that's why, like, oh, we're continually underwhelmed that Trey Lance has deep ball accuracy concerns and arm strength. I'm like, are you getting Jimmy and him confused? Because that sounds like a Jimmy Garoppolo uh, report It doesn't sound like a Trey report. So again, I don't want to spend a ton of time on the quarterback. It is something that obviously we will talk about if it's brought up, but I just wanted to get those thoughts out of my brain. That's it. Just want to get those thoughts out of my brain. The hope is overall, again, not to just focus on the problems, but the solution. What is the solution? The solution is to build an environment of belief around the quarterback that you have. So the comments that we've heard from John Lynch, the comments that we've heard from Kyle, everything alluding to Trey Lance being the starter, keep going. Keep going. And you know what? You know what? Maybe even stand on it a little bit. Maybe even go above and beyond. Name Trey Lance a starter right now. Just do it. Trey Lance will be the starting quarterback. Now, again, that's going to hurt Jimmy's trade value. So it's more nuanced than that. But I mean, just do you know how liberating that would feel for not only the fan base, but maybe Trey Lance? Again, we've heard quietly behind closed doors that Trey Lance is named the start. Just if they just came out and said it with their whole chest. Their whole chest. This is Trey Lance's team. We're building around Trey Lance. He will be the week one starter. No questions, no ifs, ands, buts, candies, or nuts. That's it. He's the starter. I would just the narrative would obviously change, but I think it would build some confidence. But again, I understand that it's much more complex than just that, and there's other things that they still want value out of Jimmy, so you can't do that. But it is what it is. Do you guys have any questions, last minute questions, anything like that that we wanted to talk to? I know today was a quarterback heavy episode, but anything else that you guys wanted to touch on? Questions, concerns, thoughts, feelings? I mean, I don't I don't totally disagree with this. I don't totally disagree with this because again, I understand that football is a business and first and foremost is a business and is less concerned about the feelings. But when we look at why the San Francisco 49ers have been successful in the past is because they've been, you know, good in that category in the business of people. I don't even know what I said, man. I that's what I'm saying. I don't even know. Coach said, "Brad, you just made me damn near trip and fall running, bro." What did I say? I don't even know what I said. I don't even know what I said, man. I don't even know what I said. But yeah, the hope is that we get this squared away. Joshua says, "Are you optimistic about a big season from Trey Lance next year?" See, that's the thing. It's like at this point, I'm just optimistic about a season. Like, as you can see, expectations and personal expectations can be your own worst enemy. I think that's kind of like what we're talking about here. It's like, what is the expectation of Trey Lance to be continually underwhelming? What is the expectation? Again, all the things that Rich says are non negotiable isn't what Trey Lance was. So then what is the expectation? This prospect that you took doesn't match your non negotiables, but then you hold them to the same regard or same standard as someone who was? Or do you, I don't know. I'm just optimistic that they give that he earns the job. Again, I don't think you should be given the job. I think, you should absolutely earn it. But at a certain point, you got to let Trey Lance go out there and just let's see what he does, man. Then we can judge off the tape because ultimately the tape is what matters the most. That's it. That's it. We just need to see it on tape. That's it. Then we go from there. And we need a baseline season. What is he going to do week in, week out, through the noise, through the adversity? How does he evolve throughout the year? Does he get better? Does he get worse? We won't know that until he's given that opportunity. So it's just hopefully something that, we can get excited about. Like at a certain point, I'm very excited about just being excited about football again. Like, I don't want to argue about who's starting at quarterback. I don't care. Hi, Turk. At a certain point, I don't care. At a certain point, I just want this noise that I know hits them. I know they hear it. I know they feel it. It would be illogical to think that they don't hear or feel this noise. Um, so the hope is, hey, shout out Turk. Turk spams hi until I say hi back. So hi Turk. At a certain point, I want to be able to get behind a quarterback. I want to get behind this team, and then we can just focus on week in and week out, getting better each week. Because we're not going to win every game, and that's okay. And we shouldn't have to we shouldn't have to have those level of expectations. Like we shouldn't be going into this season thinking that Trey Lance needs to win every game because you're going to be disappointed. And then you're setting yourself up for disappointment and you're setting him up for failure. We have to have logical milestones. Again, those first 4 games, I'm saying it right now, the first 4 to 5 games could look insanely different than the last 4 to 5 games. Just look at our season last year. Just look at how the 49ers lost 4 games in a row and then end up in the NFC Championship game. I say this always. I'll start to say it now. The first 4 weeks, if not 5 weeks of the regular season is an extended preseason. How these teams look in the first 4 to 5 weeks is going to look substantially different on the back end. The good teams who started out hot will fade. The teams that had a rocky start and just had to get it going will get better there at the end. That's just how it always works. So I'm going to keep that same energy with Trey Lance. I'm going to keep that same energy with the 49ers. First 4 or 5 weeks, TBD. We're going to find out. Again, maybe one of the only reasons why I wasn't totally freaking out when the 49ers were 0-4 and I never once said the 49ers should fire anyone because I knew what period we were in. It got there. Like we had gotten there. Like if the 49ers lost the Chicago game, then that would have been a different story. My tune I would have smashed the alarm bell. I would have said, we got some real problems if the 49ers lost the Chicago game. But that is the game where they turned the tide. That is the game where they point to, even that run where you had the entire offensive line like pushing Elijah Mitchell into the end zone. It was just a complete, almost like physiological shift in the season. And then they started getting back on track. If they had lost that game, we would have had a different conversation. But that's the point is you just got to be patient in that first portion of the year, especially with the like essentially a rookie quarterback. And so we're going to see how they build and then hopefully get on the right track after the first 4 or 5 games. And hopefully at that point, right, they didn't lose a ton of games where they're out of playoff contention. The hope is that they can at least go like 500 in the first 6 games. They go 500 in the first 6 games, then there's still an opportunity to get to the playoffs. So that's the hope. I'm not going to have crazy high expectations for this team because I feel like you're going to be set up for failure um, if you do. So try to keep expectations to a rational thought, and then we'll go from there. But shout out to everyone who hopped on. I appreciate you guys. Shout out to everyone who sent a super chat. Shout out all the SDS. Again, the vibes have been great. We understand, man. This topic is divisive, like especially amongst 49er fans, especially if you have a strong opinion, one way or the other, pro Jimmy, pro Trey, whatever. So I do want to commend the chat for, from what I've seen, having pretty solid discourse about this and having solid thoughts and solid takes because that's what we look for from the SDS. Again, we can go get all upset on Twitter all we want, but when we come into the SDS vibes, we kind of chill out and we kind of try to look at things rationally, try not to get too upset. But again, I do want to thank you guys for keeping that energy. It is appreciated because we don't need that toxicity from that situation to come on up, like come back at us. We don't need that. We don't need that, but we can talk about it and we can have thoughts about it and we can share opinions that differ and just talk about it. That's what makes the SDS the best. Um, I like this one. I like this one. Shout out to Kid Drew holding it down on Twitch. It's probably the only one in there. But again, shout out the whole SDS. You guys are the best. We'll be back tomorrow. I'm going to try to get some guests on this week. I have nothing locked in yet, but I'm going to try to get some other people on this week that we could talk more 49ers football, try to get more into some of these prospects and all that good stuff. So again, shout out all you guys for hopping in. Smash that like button if you haven't already. Hit the sub button if you're just lurking and not part of the SDS yet. Hit that sub button. Hit that bell. So hopefully you guys can get notified of any lives. I know some of you guys are having issues with that. But I hopefully YouTube gets it squared away. One last one. What if Jimmy fails his physical? Well, that's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know honestly what would happen if he failed his physical. I don't think it would be a good situation if he if he failed his physical at a training camp. Oh, that would be awful. That would be awful. But because I would imagine there's some guaranteed money coming. But I don't know that answer for sure. But that is my assumption. But again, shout out to the squad. Shout out everyone tapping in. We'll be back tomorrow with more 49ers talk.